So why is reducing food waste important? When having a discussion about food waste, it is important to me to make the distinction between food waste and wasted food. The Washington Department of Ecology defines food waste as excess, spoiled, or unused food, including the inedible components of fruits, vegetables, grains, and meat. And then wasted food is the edible portion of that food waste. So Washington generates about 1.2 million tons of food waste annually, and 35% of that food that ends up wasted is edible food. And so time and money are lost throughout the entire food system when food is wasted, and that ends up totaling in a loss of $130 billion annually. So reducing food waste strengthens our food systems and provides residents and organizations with resiliency in times of crisis, like what we have been experiencing. There you go. And so what the Washington Department of Ecology is doing is they are developing a used food well plan, and they have two goals for this plan. The first one is reducing food waste by 50% by 2030. And the second is reducing at least half of edible wasted food by 2030. And the department found that these are very much achievable goals, and they developed a plan that is comprised of three components, which are prevention, rescue, and recovery. So as you can see here on the slide, prevention will reduce the amount of food wasted. Rescue will strengthen and encourage food rescue organizations. And lastly, recovery entails using biological systems like composting to break down those inedible food materials into usable sources. And so here are some other local organizations that are combating food waste. The first here is the Vancouver Free Fridge Project, which provides mutual aid to Vancouver residents through sharing food through community fridges. And they also encourage edible landscapes. And they have a Facebook page if you'd like to check them out. The second is the Don't Let Good Food Go Bad campaign, which was started by the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. And they emphasize how Oregon and Pacific Northwest residents can reduce food waste while also saving time and money. And yeah, they found in their studies that in Oregon, the average household loses about $1,600 a year through food waste. So yeah, by reducing food waste, it's sustainable and can save you some extra money. And then the last one is Too Good to Go. And Too Good to Go is a certified B corporation that shares tips for businesses, households, and schools on how to reduce food waste. And their main project is an app titled Too Good to Go, which connects users to restaurants that have unused food. And I actually checked it out, and they have like day-old bagels for a couple of cents each and stuff like that. So definitely something that you can apply to your grocery shopping and your daily life. And I just wanted to give a thank you ahead of time to our speakers, who are all part of essential community organizations that are involved in prevention, rescue, or recovery of food here in Clark County. And by inviting them to speak tonight, we hope to provide you with resources and information regarding community action and ways to get involved in achieving Washington's goals in reducing wasted food. So up first is Christine with the Food Systems Council, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Thanks so much, Brittany. So good evening, everyone. My name is Christine Perry, and I'm the chair of the Clark County Food System Council. And I want to thank the Clark County Green Neighbors for hosting this event tonight. This is really important stuff. The Food Systems Council mission is to increase and preserve access to safe, local, and healthy food for all residents of Clark County. Since the council's inception in 2007, we have brought community stakeholders together through workshops, forums, summits, and other food system events. And obviously, we know that food waste is part of our food system, and it is a problem. I just recently read, according to the USDA in the United States alone, food waste is estimated to be between 30 to 40% of our food supply. So the Clark County Food System Council is so committed to supporting organizations like Green Neighbors and the other examples that Brittany just shared with us. And we'd like to continue to advocate for educating around these things and taking action. Like the Food Well Washington Plan, we completely support around the importance of reducing our food waste and wasted food. I love that. And making sure that all of our community and Clark County has access to healthy food, which I'm sure you'll hear from Urban Abundance and the Clark County Food Bank. So thank you all for being part of working on the food system. And if you want to learn more about the Clark County Food System Council, please visit us at our Facebook site, which I'll put in the chat box. So thank you so much for letting us be here tonight.
Thanks, Christine. And yeah, please do add that to the chat. We would love to see it. Up next is Emily with the Clark County Food Bank.
I'm going to share my screen, so it's just going to take me a quick second to pull up. I did do a little PowerPoint. So let me know when you see it. Okay, great. So at Clark County Food Bank, I'll tell you a little bit about what is a food bank. So oftentimes when people think of a food bank, they kind of think of what we call a food pantry. That's a very easy mistake to make because those words are used interchangeably throughout the state of Washington even, and definitely throughout the country. So a food bank are basically what we do is we get as much food from as many sources as possible. We bring it to the food bank and then we manage it appropriately. And we'll talk a lot about that because that's where the food waste portion comes in. And then we distribute it to as many people as possible. So that is in a nutshell what a food bank does. And so for us, this is our staff team that you're looking at right here. And just like Brittany's in AmeriCorps, we have a bunch of AmeriCorps in this team that really help us make it happen. And so for Clark County Food Bank, we average about 8 million pounds of food a year that we distribute throughout the community. Our mission, I guess, is to alleviate hunger and its root causes. And so we kind of stay on mission. We work really hard to stay on mission. That's what we do. And so to alleviate hunger for us is actually kind of close to alleviating food insecurity. And I don't know if those terms are a really big difference for you all, but for us, when we're in the food banking world, that nuanced difference makes a big difference. So we work to make sure that people have food every day and healthy and nutritious food to feed themselves and their families so that they're not making those tough decisions. And then root cause work is, of course, really complicated and nuanced and individual. And so we'll talk a little bit about how we tackle that, but our mission is to alleviate hunger and root causes. Our vision is to inspire and grow a network of community health. We do that in a variety of ways, partially just by being an agency that has lots of opportunities for education and volunteering in the community, and then also through a network of partner agencies that I think is the next screen. Oops, oh, not yet, but they're coming out. So when we say we want to get as much food from as many places as possible, like I said, that's over 8 million pounds of food for us last year. These are last year's numbers. So because we're in November, so we don't have 2021 numbers just yet. And we get it from a variety of resources. I'm not going to read the list to you, but some of them are like USDA had a really big influx of food in the last couple of years, like unprecedented amounts of food at USDA. And so that was actually our largest food source. It's no longer just what people think of as like government cheese is usually what people think of for that program. And it's a really robust program with really fabulous food, including like milk and eggs and meat and still lots of dry goods as well. And then because we're talking about waste, the second highest amount of food we get is about 2 million pounds of food, and it's the grocery store recovery program. So I'll talk mostly about that tonight. A couple different categories that help alleviate waste are the industry donors also. That's really similar to grocery store recovery, but just with bigger partners. Partners like United Natural Foods Incorporated in Ridgefield, when they're going to have truckloads of food that they can't sell or process, we go and pick it up. So we send like 3 trucks a week to United Natural Foods Incorporated. There's another really big agency called Inmar that is similar setting like that. So a lot of food recovery in those 2 categories. And then similarly, this Northwest Harvest does some food just that's not necessarily grocery store recovery or recovery food, but a lot of their food really is. So they work with big partners up north in Washington, and when they have like truckloads of apples and potatoes and onions that they can't sell, then we can pay for just the trucking costs to get it here. So we don't have to pay for the product, but we get to recover like truckloads and truckloads of food. So lots of other ways that we get food, of course, but those are some of the top ways that we get food. So some of our food partners, we have lots of food partners, but some of the ones that we usually like to talk about is we are part of the Feeding America network, and that is the biggest, that's like the nationwide network of food banks. And that comes with a lot of resourcing and a lot of education also. Like food banking is warehousing, so we warehouse stuff just like a normal warehouse, but comes with special nuances. So the Feeding America network is also part of our Oregon Food Bank relationship. And that's a really cool way to talk to other food bankers and make sure we're always getting better. And then this picture happens to be a YAY picture, so Youth Efforts Against Hunger. These are kids who raise like 4-H animals. They go to the fair, and then after the fair, if they're going to process the animals, they can donate the meat to us. It's a USDA facility, so a really cool way to get extra meat in the system. And then the last one I'll highlight real quick on this page is Walk and Knock. So Walk and Knock is the biggest single day community-led food drive in the nation. And all the food comes to the Clark County Food Bank and then gets spread out throughout the county. So in typical non-COVID years, that's over 10 semi-truckloads of food that land on the first Saturday of December. And then they've actually been working really hard to find some safe ways to do that during COVID. So they're still having walking up this year, and which we're really excited about, because it's a really cool way to get really varied amounts and types of food in the system. So when we say we want to get as much food as possible, that's kind of the food source thing. We have to manage it, which we'll talk about later, but we have to distribute it, obviously, to the community. So for us, that's a network of 43 nonprofit partners in 130 different distribution sites. So these are the nonprofit partners that you're looking at, and we kind of break them up into 3 categories. So we have a food pantry, which is usually what people think of with the food bank. People come and get their groceries. And those can look a variety of different ways, like they can be shopping style, so it really feels like a grocery store, or they can be a big box, or during COVID, some of the sites went to a drive-through model. And then the second category is a meal site. So it's where you get the hot meal, like Share House. A lot of people know downtown, they are a huge hot meal site. And then something we call special service sites is the third category. So there's food pantries, meal sites, special service sites. And a special service site essentially means that your main gig might not be food. Your main gig might be something else, but food will help you do that thing better. So an example of that is Lifeline Connections. And so their main thing is mental health and substance abuse. And they have, so if someone is in a detox facility, they might be living there for 3 days. And of course, while you're living anywhere for 3 days, you need to eat food. So they'll get food from us and make meals for those people who are living within there. So that's kind of how we categorize these different groups. And then, like I said, the food ends up being in 130 different distribution sites throughout the community. This is a map of just the food pantry sites that we partner with. So probably not super surprising. There's more people in like the central Vancouver area, or more sites, but we are kind of scattered about anyways. And again, these are just like the brick and mortar food pantry sites, not the mobile sites or anything like that. So that's how we try to reach as many people as possible. So in 2020, we served about 117,000 different people in Clark County through one of those programs or resources. And then here's a little bit of a breakdown on which resources they access. We added a lot of programming during COVID just to fill new gaps and different gaps and unique populations needs. And so we added this section called mobile community sites. So that's mobile food distributions in areas that don't have a brick and mortar site and just need a little bit of extra food, or some other programs that I think should be coming up in a minute on this presentation. So back to the food source thing, I mentioned that we receive about 2 million pounds of food through the grocery store recovery program. So for us, we take these big box trucks. We have 4 big box trucks that are these refrigerated reefer units, and they leave our dock Monday through Friday, and they head out to over 30 different grocery stores in the community. And all the grocery stores are super different because they're things like Myers and Costco and Target. And so sometimes they'll just back up into the dock and they'll be loaded up. And then other times it's like this guy, this is in Target. You actually kind of like weave through and then you go into their employee section, you pick up food. So what this person is doing is he's bringing these gray totes that we call Fresh Alliance bins. He's bringing empty totes in and he's going to go swap them for the full totes. So the grocery store team will choose the products that are at or near expiration date. They'll put them in these totes and then we'll sub them out for some fresh totes. Costco is our newest partner for this program, and they have been a dream partner. They have so much wonderful produce that they donate. So they're a little bit different where they we don't go inside at all. They just drop pallets of food out in this space and we just pick it up. But it's a really fun partnership, and we were excited to bring them on board. Gosh, I want to say maybe 2 years ago, but COVID has all sorts of messed up on my timelines. But they're our most recent new partner. And then the bins come in like this. These are this team, when they're picking up the bins, they'll have to check for like a little bit of quality control. So there's rules. We can't distribute unsafe food. And so, for example, this meat that this frozen meat in these bins has to be frozen by the date of expiration. Otherwise, we can't take it if it's frozen after that. Or if it's not yet frozen, you can't take it in that way. So they'll check, this team will go out there, they'll pick up a bunch of food. It's super heavy. These bins are big and heavy. And then they'll weigh it and they'll make sure that it like is following the basic rules. They'll temp check it and then they'll put it in the reefer. They'll drive to the next store. When they're done with their route, they'll end up at the food bank. This is at the food bank. This is a food bank employee right here. This is pre-COVID, which is why he's not wearing a mask. But the same thing happens, just masked now. And so he will offload the truck and then bring it into a group through the warehouse like this, and then into a repack room. So this is like a refrigerated room where a group of volunteers come in Monday through Friday and sort the produce and the food. So these boxes, if you shop at Costco, you probably recognize them. This is a Costco load that you're looking at. And so the food will come in mixed loads. And so this team will have to say, is it good enough to give it out to a client? So we're totally fine if it's a little dinged up or if it's just a funny shape or something like that. Like the imperfect produce model works really well at a food bank. That totally fits our model. But if it's rotten, of course, we don't give that to people. We don't want them to have an undignified experience. So they'll check them for rotten or too expired or things like that. And then they'll also sort it into categories, because when it arrives, it could be like a sandwich next to an apple. And that's just fine for us, but then we have to sort it because our partner agencies will go onto like an online inventory system and they want to know what they're ordering to serve their population. Because if you're a food pantry, you might need something different than if you're a meal site. And so we'll have this team sort it into categories like here are all the apples and here are all the fresh goods and here are all the meat and all of that, so that our sites can go online and order it. And so this, the other thing that they'll do is just make them into more reasonable box sizes. Sometimes it's like this will be like a 50-pound thing of apples, and just, I mean, people are strong, but that's really hard for people to carry. And so they'll sort them, put them in a box like this, and then the totes will get disinfected and washed each day. When we end up with a ton of Fresh Alliance produce or food in general, which happens often, which is a good problem to happen, we might need to come up with a different way to distribute it. And so during COVID, that happened. We had a lot of food come in the system and less food go out of the system. And we thought, oh gosh, that's curious. And I wonder, what's going on in the community that, we think that there's a greater need. So why is there less clients? And so we did some poking, we did some asking, we did some experimenting, and we found out that there were a few specific needs that we could have been meeting. And so this team right here in this picture is actually putting them back into an individual family-sized box. That's what this little brown box is for a special couple programs that we launched during COVID. So Same thing goes here. He's sorting these, checking them again, and then putting them in like a little bit more of a reasonably sized box. The reason being is one of the things we found is our clients are oftentimes really high risk for COVID, whether it's due to health factors or age, but there's a lot of things that can make you high risk for COVID, and our clients kind of end up oftentimes, not always, of course, being in that category. So our clients are trying to stay home and trying to stay safe. And so we heard feedback that a drive-through would make them feel a lot more comfortable, because you literally don't even have to necessarily roll down your window, and you can stay kind of far away. And so we started a drive-through at the main food bank warehouse site. So I don't know if you all know where we are, but this street, or if you're super familiar with Clark County in general, but this is 47th Street. And then the street where you see the little white car behind it, that's Minnehaha. And then the other direction is 78th. And so we would have cars that, unfortunately for our neighbors, kind of blocked all of 47th, and then would like leak on the Minnehaha on 78th Street. And so that drive-through was a huge success. It was a great way to move all of that produce in those boxes. And so I think our biggest drive-through, we had over 500 families come through in 2 hours. So yeah, here's another queue of those cars, and they're getting set up. And then our intake people, like these people that you see here, and then you'll see these little sticky notes on these cars. We'll try to figure out how many either individuals are in the household, or a lot of people try to drive together. So how many households are in the car, and that's how much food we would give them. So if you're a really big household, you would be treated as if you have more than one household. And so you might get more than one sticky note. And then as you drive through, we have special people who open the car doors, and then other people who load in the food, like these two are doing right here. And then they shut your car door and off the drive. Another special program that we built that helped distribute all this food was home deliveries. And so because we usually rely on that network of partner agencies, we don't usually do a ton of food distribution. We do some, but there was a gap for home deliveries. And so especially with our seniors who wanted to obviously stay home and stay safe during this time. So we reached out to all of the VHA sites and all of the Section 8 that we could find, and then other just random apartment complexes, and said, do you need us to deliver food to your door? So that's what's happening here. Is this apartment complex that said yes, and and then they would give us like 209, looks like they're probably getting a delivery on this time. And so we would drive there, drop off boxes at the doors. The other category of people that needed a little extra boost during COVID specifically were people with young kids in their families, because kids, of course, used to go to school and then could not go to school all of a sudden and were at home. And if you had kids in school and you were accustomed to them getting, 2 free and reduced lunch, breakfast and lunch, and probably snacks, all of a sudden you have to cover all those meals. And kids are dream and also very expensive. And so this is one of those ways that they can be kind of expensive. They can eat a lot of food. So we made these kids first boxes. We partnered with Share in Vancouver Public Schools, Evergreen Public Schools, EOCF, and Boys and Girls Club to distribute these throughout the community. And what's in here is just like, it's not crazy food, but it's just either ready to eat food or super easy to prepare food. So we're not going to send kids home with like dried lentils. Not that it's not really good food, but they probably don't know how to prepare them. So it's, the most complicated it probably got was pasta and pasta sauce in these boxes. So those are those kids' first boxes. And then the other area of need, which wasn't COVID specific, but did change up our model, was there were a couple neighborhoods that just needed more support. They needed more food. And we were hoping originally to work through our partner agency network and our same model that we're accustomed to. But the Fruit Valley neighborhood was an example of a neighborhood where, although we really wanted to find a partner, not surprisingly, no one is waiting for you to ask them to start a food pantry. And so we were knocking on people's doors asking if they wanted to start a food pantry, and they're like, that seems like a whole endeavor that we're not prepared for. So we felt bad about ignoring a community that could use additional resources. And so we built a food pantry there. And then the other site just actually happened in our own neighborhood. So we had a fabulous food pantry in our neighborhood, but it was in a super old beat up building that they'd been renting for a really long time. They built a beautiful new building, but outside the neighborhood, and it allowed, their new building allows them to do tons of additional programming and resourcing for clients. So it's a really good thing for clients. But our little pocket, our little neighborhood ended up without a food pantry. So we're renting that old building, which is funny because it's quite an old building. That's what you're looking at in this picture. But we're going to get a better building for them soon. It just was a need that day, and there was an open building that day, and so we launched this new food pantry. So we have 2 sites that we own and operate called Community Kitchen. The model's a little bit different for those. We try to have them be client-led, and so like the Fruit Valley location, for example, there was a coalition of clients that helped me build that. So they got to help with which colors they felt, they wanted the walls to be painted, or which types of shelving that they thought was most accessible, or what should be translated in what languages, and even things like, they would give me feedback like, hey, I have kids, and so if I'm going to come to this food pantry, I want a place for my kids to play. So we built a little play zone. So they're like client-led sites, both of our Community Kitchen locations, and then they're also a different model because there's no restriction. So you can come whenever you need food, as opposed to like coming once a month or once every other week. And then you can also, other than for a little bit during COVID, we went to 3 boxes, but we're back to shopping style. So you can also pick out the types of food that serve your family well. So rather than me guessing that everyone wants, chicken drumsticks in their food box, maybe you don't like chicken drumsticks. And so you get to pick out the quantity and the types of food that work well for you and your family. So that's a lot about food distribution. A couple other things that we have going on at the food bank. One of them is nutrition education. And so for us, this is one of our main, the food bank has been doing, there's been lots of people in the community doing lots of food insecurity work, working to alleviate hunger for decades and decades and decades, as far as we can figure out in the history when we try to dig into it. And but the official Clark County Food Bank building was built almost 10 years ago in January. And so since that time, one of our biggest efforts for root cause work has been nutrition education. So for us, that's everything from, we are in EOCS teaching kids how to try new flavors and taste the rainbow. So we're integrated in the schools oftentimes in that setting. So we do little kids, and then we do have classes for middle schoolers, and then high schoolers, and then for adults as well, adults and families. And so the adults and families is usually, there's a variety of different things about how to shop on a budget, how to cook on a budget, how to prep your own food. And nutrition ed, you have to learn when you're in those classes. Of course, like we would not feel great about having a nutrition ed class if you did not learn real nutrition education and cooking skills. But what's been kind of cool about those classes is we've found that is impactful to learn those skills, but really some of the lasting effects is the community that people get to build, or the confidence that they get to build in this new skill set, or when we have family classes that they get to cook together. And so it's a lot of these like tangential things that really build a family. And when you look at the social determinants of health, nutrition ed really helps kind of build some of those community values as well. We have 5 AmeriCorps nutrition educators who come in every year and teach these classes throughout the community. Those are up and running for us, and we have lots of capacity right now because not every site is open. We like to be in the community where clients actually are when possible, just so that they don't have to worry about transportation or extra childcare, and they get to know each other. And so during COVID, we went on Zoom last year, but we are able and ready to go in person, just with distancing and a couple other safety guidelines. So if you know of a partner that would be interested, let us know. I should have been more explicit about our volunteers, but I'm realizing right now when I'm getting to this stage, I wasn't. So many of the things, literally everything I talked about so far, volunteers are a part of and make happen for us. So as with most nonprofits, we try to stay as lean as possible so that whenever we do have funding, we can spend that on getting more food to more people. And so our volunteers like triple our staff hours when you look at the hours that they contribute. So it's really honestly an honor to watch all these people in the community kind of step up and be engaged during COVID, even when people could have been at home and could have been staying safe, people still came in and helped and volunteered. So it's a really big deal for us. And volunteers do everything from truck driving, like in the Fresh Lines program. They're integrated in our development team, helping with our financial records, and then kind of anything in between. So food sorting, lots of things. We have activities for kids. So Another program for us that is really big and super fun is our farm program. Christine is familiar with this program because she's over at Heritage Farm. So for us, that looks like we lease and manage about 12 acres of property. And from that, we grow and harvest about 124,000 pounds of produce. And then we also purchase a lot of product from local small farms. It's an effort to contribute to the health of the food system in general. And then small farms, the farming is really expensive and very hard to pull off if you're a farmer. And so one of the feedback points that we heard was it's really hard for a small farmer because all of their costs are upfront at the beginning of the season, but they don't really make any money, of course, until they can harvest food. And so that can be a really tough window. Like you have to have enough money to get through that season. And so the contracts that we do is we pay up front and then they have a contract. And then we also go kind of closer to the imperfect produce model, which is like, if you have a CSA and you want to give out your best produce in those boxes, oh my gosh, go and do that. We can take the like funny shaped stuff or the excess that you have. And so it's a way that they have an outlet to sell the food that they probably wouldn't sell otherwise. And then also to get that money up front so that they can buy some of those expensive infrastructure things that they need. And then the other food waste call out that we usually talk about is that farmers market. So if you're at the farmers market, if you're a farmer and you might go on Saturday and Sunday at the Vancouver farmers market, and maybe you don't have a farmers market to go to until the next Saturday, the produce that you brought on that Sunday, you may not have another home for that until the next Saturday. And that may not fit your guidelines for your quality on the produce that you want to distribute in that setting. And so if that's the case, if you're just going to lug all that home and then it's going to go to waste, we'd rather have you donate it to us because we can get it out to people who need it. So that's about 17,000 pounds of food a year that we glean from farmers markets. Brittany asked us to talk a little bit about how to get involved here. I know some of y'all on the call, so I think some of you already know this, but we kind of talk about there's give, help, tell is the categories we talk about. So of course we love food and we can accept lots of different types of food. And so if you have fresh produce in your garden, oh my gosh, we love that. If you're like me and you grow like a couple tomato plants, like I cannot eat a couple tomato plants worth of tomatoes. So that's great for us at the food bank if you want to bring that by, or if you drive, or if you just have extra things in your cupboard like what we talked about earlier today. Funds, of course, we accept funds. We're a nonprofit. I don't know nonprofits that don't. We have events that we'd love you to be involved in, or it's really fun for us to find what is exciting for you and what you want to support. So if you have any questions and you're like, hey, I really am more passionate about this versus this, let us know and we can help you get connected in a way that makes sense for you. Help is the volunteer thing, of course. Our volunteers make our world go round, so they're engaged at all hours of all days that we're there as well, helping make things happen at the food bank. And then this one is actually, Tell is the one that has been most haunting to me, I would say, since COVID started. We have had an influx of brand new people. So there's people who kind of know the food system and there's people who've never ever touched the food system before. And since COVID, the people who are already in the food system actually were doing, depending on the person, of course, but okay-ish, I'll say. There wasn't something crazy that happened to these people in general. Our regulars, we're still regulars mostly, and the less regulars were mostly still less regulars, and there were a lot of resources out there for them that helped. But there was this brand new pocket of people who had never touched the food system that COVID just was really tough on. And so we had more people than ever call us and say, I just don't know how to do this, and how do I get food, and how do I qualify, and do I qualify, and I'm kind of embarrassed, and there's just lots of calls like that came to the food bank. And so we were a little taken back by that. To be honest, we thought, oh my God, we think this is kind of easy to get food, but that's because we're dummies and we do this every day. So of course we think it's easy to get food. We know how this works. And so we've been doing a lot of work on revamping how we inform the community, because we don't want people to not know how to get food. And it's really easy to get food in most case scenarios. And there's a lot of myth busting that we're trying to do since COVID happened. Things like, no, you absolutely do not need a photo ID, and you do not need to bring a photo ID if you want to get food. You literally need to bring nothing, just show up and you'll get food. How do you qualify is similar. You qualify by self-disclosed need, and you don't have to say, hey, I'm needy. That's not what self-disclosed need is. But by showing up at our doorstep, you are therefore declaring that you need food and we would love to give you food. And there's tons of food out there. So people also get worried. They're so kind and they want to share it with the community. And I appreciate that. But we are not out of food. We've never run out of food. We have lots of food and we can go get more food. We would love to have the problem be, oh my God, we need to go work and get more food to serve the community better. So if you know anyone who needs food, absolutely, you can give them my personal information. You can give them food bank information. You can send them to our website. But we want people to spread the word that there's lots of food out there, also recovered food out there, and lots of ways to get it. And we would love to walk them through that, and hopefully they have a really good experience and feel comfortable getting food. So if you ever want to spread the word, absolutely do so. And if you need help with education on how to spread the word, let me know, and I would love to meet with you and try to do that. Here's contact information, just basic info about us. You can find it on Google, so this page might not be the most helpful. But I'll also drop my personal info in the chat. So if you have anything that you want to follow up with me, just let me know. I'm going to stop sharing now.
Thank you so much, Emily. That was so informative, and I know I learned a lot myself. Next, we have Tina from Urban Abundance.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm hoping that my audio is going to be okay because throughout Emily's talk, it was going in and out. So give me a holler if it's bad. Yeah, I'm Harvest Coordinator and also the Resiliency Garden Coordinator for Urban Abundance. And what Urban Abundance is like a much smaller organization compared to the food bank. I was listening and I was thinking, oh God, we're just so much littler. But yeah, so our mission is to engage neighbors in the creation maintenance that are accessible to everyone. And so the vision is fresh local food accessible to all, ingrained culture of foraging, gleaning, and sharing surplus, no food going to waste, having an expanded use of public spaces for community agriculture, have the community engaged in maintaining community gardens and orchards, replacing lawns with edible landscapes, and then food sovereignty and resilience throughout our community. So that's kind of been the dream. And it's been going since kind of 2010, when just a group of friends were seeing food by the side of the street and going like, oh, what are we going to do about this? So let's see if I can manage to share my screen. Yikes, I'm bad at this. Where is it? There. Share screen. Okay, can people see my screen? Awesome.
Yes, I can see
Okay, super. So this is kind of the basis of urban abundance. Like some people go like, oh God, look at that, it's a mess. And our kind is like, oh, look, snacks. And we get up with friends and they're like, oh, what kind of a tree should I plant? And I'm like, well, plant a fruit tree. Of course, what kind of a question is that? And people go like, well, but then when all the falls down, it makes a mess. And I'm like, well, you eat it. It's not supposed to fall down. So yeah, that's where urban abundance comes in. And yeah, like Emily was saying, there is food around. It's just getting it to the people who need it. And I think a lot of what urban abundance is doing is ownership and pride in that. Yes, we have food. Like we're not letting it go to waste. So there was mention of not wasting money. But another thing that's really close to my own heart, I'm also a climate activist, and just the carbon footprint of food waste is huge. It's, yeah, I'm bad at remembering numbers, but by the time you think about all the energy waste that's gone from like the whole farm making that food, and then it goes bad. So it's, yeah, really food should not go to waste. And so, yeah, that's how urban abundance kind of came into being about 10 years ago. And people were like, well, you know, what can we do about this? How can we not just let this fall down? So preventing food waste, supporting the local food pantries. So most of our food that we gather, we sort, and all of the bank. And then whatever is kind of second choice, our volunteers take home and eat. And then the other thing we do is educate fruit tree owners and neighbors. And through that, Urban Abundance has been running a fruit tree stewardship program that teaches members of the community how to take care of trees. We're also hoping to help preserve productive land and community space, and also the code. And yep, that's kind of what we're about. These are the community orchards that we were or are harvesting. So this year we've definitely been out at Omega Farms, at Foley Orchard, and at Curtin Springs. And in the past, we've also harvested Healthy Homeland in Fort Vancouver. And I believe there's some like uncertainty whether Healthy Homeland will continue to exist, trying to be like advocates for that will not be chopped down. Alrighty, and then, like I mentioned earlier, the fruit tree registry. So not everybody has a huge big orchard, but a lot of people have a tree, sometimes multiple trees, but very often I've said to myself this year when I went out to harvest, okay, it's just one tree, just a box or two will be fine. And there's so much from a single tree. So this was one tree that I went out to this year in Battleground, and yeah, it had so much. So we have this fruit tree registry where people can sign themselves up, and then they go onto our database, and we typically reach out at the beginning of the harvest year and just let them know, hey, this is the person who coordinates the harvest this year. This is how our system works. And so I'm out. And oh man, I'm not sure if I can change out of this because let me try this. So if we go back to, so this is the Urban Abundance website. If you just go urbanabundance.org, and it also has the direct links to like how to register a tree. You could just click on that and it forwards you to a form. If you want to apply for a resiliency garden, which I'll talk about later, it's right here. You can look. If you want to volunteer, I'm not quite sure where that takes us, but let's go see. Okay, so that just takes you to Facebook, but there also is another website which, I wanted to show you guys this. So this is our Gleaning Opportunities portal. So that's a commercial platform that we're renting space on. So you log into this platform if you go through urbanabundance.dupli.com. And if somebody maybe could put that in the chat, because I'm clearly not multitask. And so you can register yourself here. You will fill out a liability release form, and then you will be able to see over here where there's gleaning opportunities. And there's also, we will have your contact. So typically we'll send an email if we have gleanings or harvests going on to all our volunteers, just saying, hey, this is happening next Saturday, do you want to come? So this is okay. Does everybody see the slideshow again now?
Not yet.
Okay, let me see if I can fix that. How about now?
Not yet. No, we're still looking at the website. Oh, there you go.
Okay. So he's pulling fruit off trees when it comes to handling computers. I'm not quite so suave. Okay, so that's kind of the little story about the fruit tree registry. Sometimes that plays nicely together with the fruit tree stewards. I know for myself, when I took my initial training with Urban Abundance, I've kind of been their volunteer since they came into existence. And I, for a long time, had adopted somebody's backyard who was in my neighborhood, pruned them, went out to harvest. So it's really nice. It's a way of fostering community. Why doesn't this forward? There. Okay, so how do we do that harvesting? How do we take care of both the community orchards and the registered fruit trees? So we do, especially with COVID, these last lovely 2 years, we've been mostly doing volunteers. We haven't had big events. Something we've called Pick a Paraton has been a big thing. So for the most part, we've had, so if somebody has just their own private backyard registered, usually we send a volunteer out for safety. With the bigger orchards, we had bigger work groups because we could space it out. So these folks here, they came out to Omega Orchard this year, and they were like a pod of 2 families, and they went to town picking. The kids went nuts trying to find the biggest pear. At the end of the day, like we had over 700 pounds of pears that we then took to the food bank. So other ways to get involved are like either becoming a fruit tree steward and master gleaner. I touched down on that. So that is a really excellent program that teaches about fruit tree pruning, pest management, harvest, the whole shebang. So, and that it was good, but also you could just attend a work party, and those you would mostly find either if you're on our volunteer database, we'll let you know, or on the social media like Facebook, typically we put a link saying, hey, this is happening. Sometimes we have training workshops that are specifically like, hey, do you want to learn how to prune blueberries, or how to, you know, to pass on? You can register your backyard tree if you want to give to the community. Yeah, and it's really, really worthwhile, especially when COVID isn't there, because you just get to hang out with fun people, have a good time. Often in the summer, the weather's great. It's beautiful places we get to hang out, and at the same time pick fruit that then goes to people who can eat it versus not going to waste. And we're sticking it in fruit that's just freely available. Yep, so those are some pictures from harvest. So you can either just join a harvest party. I'm thinking once COVID is done, we might go back to having larger harvests where we lead harvest crew leaders. Right now we don't. So I was the sole employee this year who was kind of trying to coordinate how the harvest went. Yeah, so those are our harvests. This year we got, while pear season was going, because we had 2 big pear orchards that we were harvesting, we would average out somewhere around 600 pounds of pears a day. And the food bank told me, like, please don't bring any more. That's about as much as we can move shift in a day. So that was cool. We were at capacity. So yeah, apart from being part of community and just doing what feels right. So there's free fresh fruit. You can meet like-minded people. It's building community. And that's often helpful to keep in mind when somebody has registered a tree that's really poorly kept. It's hard to harvest. There's not a lot of good fruit on it, but you're still, you're holding together your community. You're doing the best that you can. Yeah, and then for the volunteers, it's also nice to just have that connection. Where does okay, yeah, so that was what you've seen so far. The pictures, they were mostly from pre-COVID days. That was when our main emphasis was on harvesting, getting to the urban fruit that was just not being utilized. And then with COVID, it was like, oh my God, we can't do anything the way we used to. There's people going really hungry. There's actually food shortages now. And it got called the Resiliency Gardens. And the idea of those was that, similar to a victory garden, the Resiliency Gardens were created to address national shortages of food. And what a resiliency garden is, we'll get to in a minute. So here's some pictures. So through the last 2 years, we've installed 12 resiliency gardens, and we were not at capacity. We could have done more, and I believe next year. So if anyone is interested in having a resiliency garden, you can go on the urbanabundance.org website and click on that link for the Resiliency Gardens. And that should give you some more information. So how do those gardens work? So once somebody fills out the or the application form, we will assist with the site evaluation just to see, do these people have it? And if that is the case, we might do a little bit of problem solving, brainstorming of, well, what kind of a garden might you want to do? Might you want to do a raised bed or a lasagna garden, or whatever works best with that site, and also with the kind of gardener that we're going to be working with. And then once that's all sorted, we will bring a truckload of planting soil and some vegetable starts that we source locally from a CSA farm. Sometimes some part that Urban Abundance does. The host then commits to keeping the garden watered and weeded, and we're just asking to not use any chemicals on it. So we're growing healthy food. And then that produce is free for the neighbors to pick. So there's the sign that was back there. It just says, take what you need, pull a weed, leave some for others. We have found that, or I have found, because I have one of those in my front yard, that people would stop, like, oh, that's so sweet, but nobody would take anything. So different gardens have had different successes. Some people advertise what's ripe through social media and people come get it. Some people just have a little harvest table where things is already picked and just sitting there ready to take. I have just talked to random neighbors who've slowed down and looked at them and just yelled at them kindly to the, hey, this is for you, you can take it. And a small drop in a area of large need. I mean, we're not feeding anywhere near as many people as the food bank does, but we're more fostering community. We're bringing to people that it's okay to share food, to food that's being gifted by others, and just to kind of, yeah, empower people to go like, oh, I can do this. And yeah, so I think the really are quite nicely for us. And I think that is all I have. Let me look at my notes. Did I not say anything else on it? Nope. And so, yeah, this year, and I'm guessing it's been due to COVID, we didn't have quite the numbers of volunteers out harvesting that we used to have in the past years. So please do come with me. Oops. Oh no. What did I do? Let me try that again. So, no. There. So yeah, do come play with us, and you can either sign up for the mailing list or find us on Facebook. I find Facebook personally, I find it works pretty well. Or if you have any other questions, you can email Lindsay at slowfoodssouthwestwashington.org. She's our director, and she will get back to you. Or also, I will just put my email in the chat. Thanks, Tina, for putting the urban. Feel free to reach me. It's very easy. It's Tina at urbanabundance.org. So that should be easy to remember. So yeah, I'm happy to chat with anyone after this in case I've went past or over anything. Yeah, so I think that is all I had. And oh my, I waffled for quite a long time. We're running over here. And thanks, Brittany, for having me on Urban Abundance.
Of course, thank you. And it's no problem. It was all awesome information. I have learned a lot from everyone tonight. Before we wrap things up, we thought after hearing our inspiring speakers that we could do a quick poll and we could find ways to reduce food waste in our own homes. And so I am going to launch. Oh, I'll show you what's going to be on the poll first. Let's see. And so we have 3 different ways that you can reduce food waste. The first is shop your shelves. So create 1 new meal with almost expired food before going to the store. The second is mindful grocery shopping. So knowing what you will use and maybe what you didn't use in the past. And the third is eat your leftovers. If you've got a little bit left over from a previous meal, you could save it for the next day. I personally love cold leftovers. And so, yeah, so here's that. I will stop sharing my screen again, or I think I can do the poll too. Nope. And at the end of the meeting, after we get everyone's poll results, we will be giving away a sustainability kit to one of the attendees tonight. So by taking the pledge, you might get some free stuff as well. And I'll give everyone a couple of minutes to fill that out. All right, I'm going to stop it in just a moment if anyone wants to get their last vote in. and we can see what's on everyone's minds tonight. Can everyone see that? Great, thank you, Camille. Looks like everyone's getting excited about shopping their shelves, 54%. Well, with that, I will wrap it up because I know we've got to eat dinner and we've got other stuff to do tonight. So I just wanted to thank everyone for coming, and thank you again to our speakers. It was very educational, and I know that we all got a lot from hearing y'all. Well, thank you again. Have a good night, y'all.